was a chilling, gruesome crime that shocked the nation nearly 21 years ago. June 7th, 1998, three white men in Jasper, Texas beat an African-American man, this man, James Byrd Jr., and then chained him to the back of a pickup truck.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel here. It's Lavender here, and today I'm back with another true crime case. Today I'm doing the true crime case of the hate crime murder of James Bernard Jr. story. So let's get started into this true crime story. So the media and TV, this event and true crime, hate crime case has been featured in a number of media and TV, such as Jasper, Texas is a Lifetime like TV movie. Is a 2003 American-made for television drama film directed by Jeffrey W. Bernard, and the teleplay of Jonathan Estreen is based on the true story and focuses on the aftermath of the crime in which three white supremacist men from a small town of Jasper, Texas, killed an African-American man known as James Bernard Jr. by dragging him behind the pickup truck and decapitating him. Another thing that it was in was a Alabama musician known as Matthew Mayfield wrote, recorded, and released and directed a song in James' honor. The tune, titled Still Alive, is the fourth track on Mayfield's EP. Barry, who was driving, instead of taking James home, the three men took James to a remote county road out of town, beat him severely, and then tied him to a pickup truck at the back, and then just dragged him across the ground, and then he became decapitated and died. And, Brewer later had claimed that James's throat had been cut as well and slashed by Barry before he was dragged. However, forensic investigation evidence suggests that, forensic files evidence suggested that James had been attempting to keep his head up while being dragged, and autopsy suggested that James was still alive during much of the dragging before he was decapitated. James died about halfway along the route of his dragging when his right arm and head were severed from his body, and when the driver hit a culvert. While almost all James's ribs were fractured, his brain and skull were found intact, further suggesting that he maintained consciousness while this whole event was happening. Barry, Brewer, and King dumped the mutilated remains of James's body in front of an African-American church on Huff Creek Road, then drove off to a white supremacist barbecue, because it's very common for white supremacists to do hate crimes and do a barbecue. It's a tradition of theirs. A motorist later found James's decapitated remains and body the following next morning. Along the area where James was dragged and murdered, police found a wrench with the name Barry written on it. They also found a lighter that was inscribed with Possum, which was King's prison nickname. They left a bunch of evidence that led to them, basically. Since Brewer and King were all well-known white supremacists, this case was actually charged as a hate crime, and the FBI Houston office got involved immediately because of this extreme circumstances of this true crime, hate crime case. It's like one of the most worst, hate crimes ever. King had several racist tattoos. He got in prison, a black man hanging from a tree, Nazi symbols, the word Aryan Pride, and a patch for a gang of white supremacist inmates known as the Confederate Knights of America. In a jailhouse letter to Brewer that was intercepted by jail officials, King expressed pride in the crime he did, showing no remorse. And he said this quote, "Regardless of this outcome of this, we have made history. Death before dishonor, sing hell." King wrote, an officer investigating the case also testified and witnesses that King had referenced the Turner Diaries after beating James. This is the same thing that the Oklahoma City bomber, Tim McVeigh, did. He also read and got inspired by the Turner Diaries. Numerous aspects of the James murder echoed lynching traditions that were common in the post-Civil War South, such as a barbecue, white supremacist barbecue. In 1999, the documentary Journey to a Hate-Free Millennium was created, showcasing three of the United States' some of the worst hate crimes in the United States, including the shootings of Columbine High School and the death of a gay student, Matthew Shepard, and the execution of James. The documentary went on to win over 100 film and educational awards and has been used in schools all over the world as a means to educate people and stop hate. And in 2009, the Matthew Shepard and James Bernard Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act expanded. Lawrence Russell Brewer was a white supremacist. He showed no remorse and stuff. Brewer and King became friends in the Beto unit prison. When he went back to prison, a psychiatrist testified that Brewer did not appear to have any remorse for what he did to James, or he had no remorse whatsoever. As he told a news station in Houston, "As far as any regrets go, I have no regrets. No, I do it all over again. If I had to tell you the truth, he showed no remorse. He showed no remorse whatsoever." And long story short, he asked for a last meal of like a lot of things, such as 2 chicken fried steaks with gravy, sliced onions, triple patty bacon cheeseburger, a cheese omelet with ground beef, tomatoes, onions, bell peppers, and jalapenos, a bowl of fried okra with ketchup, 1 pound of barbecued meat with half a loaf of white bread, 3 fully loaded fajitas, a meatloaf pizza, one pint of Bluebell vanilla ice cream, and a slab of peanut butter fudge with crushed peanuts on top, and 3 root beers. And long story short, he literally got all that, but he literally just said he was not hungry. And long story short, that led to Texas banning people from getting their own customized meals because he wasted the food. That's why in Texas you can't just pick your own food anymore because it's his fault. Sean Berry, during the trial, the prosecution found out that he was not a white supremacist. They argued that he was just as responsible for the murder as suggested, that he might have been a thrill killer, but that the racism and wasn't a motive in this. Berry attorneys had 3 black men who knew him testify that he wasn't a racist. Berry claimed that Brewer and King were the main accomplices and that were responsible for this hate crime. And he said he tried to stop them from attacking James until they said they would do the same thing to him that they did to James. However, Brewer testified that Berry had cut James's throat before he was tied to the truck. The jury decided that minimal evidence supported this claim. Berry was also the only one of the 3 men to show any remorse whatsoever. As a result, he got life in prison. And John William was Berry's longtime friend. He was accused of beating James with a bat and then dragging him behind the pickup truck until he died. He was found guilty and sentenced to death for his role. I think he's been put to death very recently.